Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Talking Point. My name is Fahraaz Patel. I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, TSTV channel 347. Now, my guest today is no stranger to South African politics. He's been on quite a journey for the last year. Of course, he was the deputy leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters. He then served as the Secretary General of the MK Party. And just last week, of course, he launched the Mayibuye Consultation Process. I'm talking about none other than Floyd Shivambu. And of course, he is my guest on Talking Point for tonight. Mr. Shivambu, good day. Thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Point on Hilaal TV.
No, good evening, Fahraaz, and evening to the viewers of Talking Point here in Hilaal TV.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I know we've been trying to get you on, even at your past political home, so I'm happy that we have you here on today. Let's talk Mayibuye Consultation Process. So when I was doing a bit of research, I actually wanted to ask you, is this some sort of an alternative to the national dialogue, or is this something completely different?
No, look, the process that we are engaged in now is a completely separate process. It's a process to establish from all sectors of South African society, from different constituencies, from traditional leaders, from religious institutions, from literally everyone, from the youth, from students, from women groups, from workers' unions, from a variety of constituencies. We are in the process of establishing as to whether is there a need to constitute or to found another political liberation movement, because in our objective analysis is that the former liberation movement, the African National Congress, is no longer a fighting instrument for total liberation and emancipation. That's one, but also that the two other liberation forces or potential liberation forces, which are the MK and the EFF, seem to be having perennial weaknesses to could be fighting instruments in the hands of the people due to internal dynamics which appears irreparable now. So we are asking the people of South Africa as to what is to be done, what do we do differently to what has been existing in the past, and if the mandate from the people of South Africa after consultations is that we should constitute a political movement or a political party, we will do exactly that because they seem to be a gradual losing of interest in mainstream political participation by a substantial number of South Africans. You will know that in South Africa, more than 41 million people are above the age of 18, meaning that they're eligible to vote. But in the 2024 general elections, it was less than 18 million people who participated in elections, meaning that there is beginning to be less and less interest in the democratic and electoral processes because the existing parties seem to be not offering alternate and real solutions to the problems that are confronting society. So we are legitimately asking a question to the people of South Africa as to whether we should establish a political party or a political movement, and if we do so, what values should guide that particular party, and what should distinguish that political party from the existing movement so that it becomes an instrument for transformation, an instrument for progress, an instrument to drive economic development, the development of the productive forces, an instrument to create full employment for the people of South Africa, an instrument to have a government that will fight crime and have common prosperity for all the people of South Africa. That is the process that we're engaged in. National dialogue is a talk shop of government. They're just going to talk about things that are there. And I can tell you now that they're going to come out with more or less the same solutions that they're trying to implement now and have dismally failed to deal with the triple crisis of poverty, of unemployment, and massive inequalities in South Africa. So the dialogue is a waste of resources. It's a talk shop which is not going to bear any meaningful consequences. The real dialogue that is happening is whether we should not constitute a revolutionary alternate political movement that will change the lives of our people.
One of the discussions, I will touch on it later on, Mr. Shivambu, is of course leftist socialist politics, which you have been throughout your whole political career from the ANC Youth League. I want to touch on this consultation process. You've mentioned something important about elections. Next year, local government elections is about to come. A large number, and you've mentioned it, of voters said, well, why should I vote? Because I'm not getting the service delivery that I want. My municipalities are failing, my metros are failing, my ward councillors are not listening to our demands. So what does Mayibuye consultation process add that is going to be different to what maybe other political parties had offered, and some of them had actually failed in delivering for the residents and for the citizens of our country?
So Mayibuye consultation process is not a political party.
No, I know, but from a discussion perspective.
So it's not a political party. It's a process. It's a process. It's a platform. It's an opportunity that is offered to the people of South Africa to shape their own movement. So if they say that they want a political party, they must be able to define collectively that this is the type of political party that we want to define and give meaning to. And ourselves, we have volunteered ourselves that we are willing to be the expression of whatever will be the outcome of that particular consultation process. One of the things that we will naturally be inclined to is that if we were to constitute a political movement or political party, it must be a transparent political party. It must not be a cult. It must be accountable to the people of South Africa. It must not just be a talking instrument. It must identify social assistance programs and begin to do work in different communities. There's a lot of things which any group of people can do in South Africa. If you were to raise resources, you can be able to intervene in some areas that they have never seen any piped water since forever. You can be able to put up a borehole and at least provide water to those that have never seen any piped water. You can be able to conduct health awareness and health screening programs and campaigns in areas that do not have clinics or hospitals. You can be able to offer educational assistance programs in different areas. And some of the things that I'm saying I'm inclined to is some of the programs which, in my individual capacity and not for political reasons, I've got to be involved in the areas where I grew up in Malamlele, Mawonisi village where I was born and bred. And got to intervene not only in the village where I come from, but also in the surrounding villages to assist with the basic things that assist young people to at least realize their full potential. So that is what I would be inclined to if there were to be a decision that we should constitute a political movement. But also that movement should be defined by certain core principles which we cannot divorce ourselves from. And that includes a commitment to honesty and respecting everyone. It also includes the respect of religious institutions, the respect of traditional leaders. That also includes anti-imperialism, that we're not going to agree to constitute a movement that is going to be a puppet of Western imperialism that continues to undermine the progress that is taking place in the developing nations. And we would also familiarize far much easier with the anti-colonial sentiment and politics that are happening in the Sahel region, with Burkina Faso, with Mali, with Niger, perhaps as well with some of the energy that is beginning to show in the Republic of Gabon with the new head of state, who seems to be much more intentional in terms of driving a progressive anti-colonial agenda to reverse the barbarism and the consequences, remnants of colonialism that got to define our continent since the beginning of history, that we have never got to be liberated as the black majority and Africans in particular, that we've always been under the yoke of slavery, of colonialism, of underdevelopment. And we have to break from that yoke as a generation so that we inspire future generation to pursue their lives to full potential and common prosperity for all.
Yeah, anti-colonialism, I am going to touch at the end of the show about Palestine, a subject that you're very, very passionate about. But Mr. Shivambu, before we go to the break, 10 political parties, you've mentioned that in your press conference. So,
Yes.
so it's open to anyone. You've also said religious institutions. So, for
Yes.
example, the Islamic movements, are they welcome to join the Mayibuye
No, look,
Africa?
any formation that associates with these core principles that we have mentioned are welcomed to associate with Mayibuye Consultation Process. They can come and make their inputs as to what they think should be an alternate vision of politics in South Africa. So everyone is open. Even if later on there is a conclusion that we should form a political movement, there's already beginning to be suggestions that that political movement should not just be through membership of one individual. It must be opened to affiliate membership as well, where large institutions and organizations can join as organizations. So once that period gives us the direction that we must open up the process, everyone else is allowed to join, whether it's the Muslim community or Muslim associations in terms of what happens. So it's an open process that is available for everyone else to associate with.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Floyd Shivambu, the Mayibuye Consultation Process National Convener. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with Floyd Shivambu, the Mayibuye Consultation Process National Convener. Mr. Shivambu, you've been in politics since as long as I can remember, and obviously from the ANC Youth League to the EFF to the MK Party. How would you supposedly arrange your journey now? How do you say this journey to Mayibuye Consultation Process would sum it up for you at this very moment as we speak?
Look, we've always been active in political activism from early age, from high school period and in the university. We played central roles in terms of student activism, leading SASCO and leading the Students' Representative Council of Wits University far much earlier in life, and being assigned actually when I was the SRC president to coordinate a national process of merging what was existing then as the South African Universities SRCs and something called the South African Union of Technical Students, SATSU, the South African Technical Students Union, SATSU, to form one organization called the South African Union of Students. So far much earlier, I had the national responsibility to form a national organization of all students, literally all universities and universities of technology in South Africa. And then later on, of course, got to be in the leadership of SASCO at national level and in the Young Communist League, and got to lead the ANC Youth League as well. And then, of course, we founded the Economic Freedom Fighters, which is a national organization that got to be represented everywhere. So all those collective experiences got to contribute to a firm foundation and politics that we espouse now. So I've had access to the highest decision-making bodies of the ANC when I was in the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League for 5 years. So I sat in all the decision-making structures at the in Luthuli House. And I know the election strategies, I know the economic transformation processes and what happens. And I know the limitations that perennially can never be resolved within the ANC in terms of pursuit of meaningful agenda. I know the decision-making process of the EFF, and I know that it is not an instrument for change. It is not an instrument for liberation. It is not an instrument for common prosperity. I know the decision-making process of Umkhonto weSizwe, and I know beyond any doubt that Umkhonto weSizwe is not an instrument for change.
But you're a member of it.
I am a member of Umkhonto weSizwe. So this is what happens with membership of political parties. A political party can't reflect your whole being as to what happens. You have to agree that there are certain things that you might not agree with, and then you influence from inside the ideological character and direction of that particular movement. So it was not going to be possible, by the way, to have organizations if you think that your personal views as a person must 100% replicate what the organization that you serve in stands for. There are certain things which you might not agree with. Like there are so many people, for instance, who are religious zealots, and they don't become comfortable if the political organizations that they associate with have got different religious expressions and manifestations. So there are certain things that you look into. What you must never do as a revolutionary activist anywhere in the world is to sacrifice principle on the altar of convenience. And you must never keep quiet when there is wrongdoing, even in the organizations that you serve in. That is why I provide a comprehensive, robust critique of Mkhonto, which I'm a member of, to say that in its current configuration, it is not an instrument for change. It is not an instrument for liberation. It is not an instrument for progress. There are people who have captured it for narrow purposes, for self-enrichment, for wrong purposes altogether. And you can't have an organization that is run in the manner in which Mkhonto is being run, being entrusted with the responsibilities of leading the state and government. That is why we are in this conversation now as to whether we should establish or not a political movement that will replace these other organizations. The less said about the DA, the better, because the DA is a representation of white interests. It's about protection of the remnants and consequences of apartheid and colonialism. They want to protect the white privilege that has existed due to the racist system of colonialism and apartheid. So we are legitimately raising these questions to society. And when we are raising these questions, it doesn't mean that we don't have views. We have views, but we do want to listen to the people of South Africa as to how do we shape a new movement that will become a true representation of people's aspirations and interests.
Mr. Shivambu, you interestingly put about the MK party. You're still a member of the MK party. So how close or how far are you from separating yourself from it?
That, by the way, is going to be an outcome of a process. It's not up to me. If the people that we consult say that we should form a political party and that political party will not allow dual membership amongst its leaders, I will fully abide by that. If the collective of Mayibuye Consultation Process say that please leave membership of any other political party, I'm ready to let go of that membership. If MK says we are not comfortable with you presiding over a process of considering founding another political party, we are going to take our membership, let them take it. But I'm committed to this process of Mayibuye Consultation Process to seek solution to the people of South Africa, not just for ourselves now, but for future generations. If Pixley Kaseme did not come with the idea of founding the South African Natives National Congress in the early 1900s, there was never going to be a fighting instrument against colonialism and apartheid. He had to take that courageous step of saying, let the traditional leadership, let prominent leaders of society gather to found a national organization that will be a fighting instrument against colonialism and apartheid. And the South African Natives National Congress, which was renamed the ANC in 1923, was founded. Of course, it fought against colonialism and apartheid, but after that, it did not know what to do. That is why there is this necessary discussion as to what then replaces the former liberation movement with a liberation movement in the 21st century, which is going to bring about economic prosperity, social stability, and common progress for all the people of South Africa. That is what we are busy with in terms of what happens. The issue of political party membership is a non-issue, man. It's not a major issue that defines our politics.
Mr. Shivambu, before we go to the break, and this is going to lead into the next conversation after this.
Okay.
My colleague Mfundo Mabalani, who you had an interview last week with, we worked together at a previous station. She turned a question to you, and I'm going to turn something similar to what she had asked. That is there a space now in the political space for this sort of radical take on the way things are done, this fiery way of hitting out at parties or establishments that are seen as quote-unquote imperialistic or captured by certain individuals? Because when you look at the citizens of this country, all they're asking for is deliver us what is promised to us in the Constitution, number one, and what was promised by the leaders before, especially in 1994. Now, a lot of that has not been fulfilled, especially when you look at higher education. So where does Mayibuye Consultation Process? I know you're not a political party, so for me to ask you, well, are you going to deliver in the next elections until you become one, is too premature to ask. But if this process morphs into a political party, where does Mayibuye say we are ready to take the stand and help the people, be a political party for the people and not for sitting in parliament and screaming out or raising issues which are not going to necessitate itself?
Shouldn't that process, what you have just said now, be what we're going to listen the people of South Africa say? Like it will be wrong to give the character and nature and conclusively say that this is how the movement is going to look like. And we still say in the same sentence that we're going to listen to the people. It will be disingenuous. The reason why we say we're going to listen to the people of South Africa is because we want them to shape this movement as to what becomes its priorities. Like you have attempted yourself to summarize what you think are the interests of the people of South Africa. It might not be factual. Because
but I mean, everyone wants good service delivery, Mr. Shivambu.
You can't say everyone. So
but
this
I'm sure
is
everyone wants good service delivery, Mr. Shivambu. Both you and I would agree on that.
It's a very dangerous thing to do.
Okay, no problem.
So it's a very dangerous thing to do, to want to speak on behalf of the people that you have not listened to. That is why we are humbly going to the ground to listen to the people as to what they want, because that is where the mistakes of politicians come in, where you sit in boardrooms or in a room like this with lots of lights, and then you think that you know what are the aspirations and immediate interest of the people and how they should be handled without listening to the people. So the listening process that we're engaged in is a genuine, legitimate, and well-intentioned listening process that is going to capture what are the sentiments and the values of the people on the ground and how they want us to resolve the problems moving forward. And that is what we're busy with. And then from there on, we will be able to shape a movement based on what the people would have said are their aspirations and interests. Clearly, there is a voice which is not being listened to. And because of not being listened to, what does it do, that voice? It pulls back from electoral politics to the extent that more than 50% of eligible voters do not participate in elections at all. Those are the people that we want to listen to so that we're able to come with a process and a solution that will be a solution not only for ourselves, not only for this generation, but for generations to come.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Floyd Shivambu. We're going to be touching on leftist socialist politics. Does it still have a place within South Africa? Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. Mr. Shivambu.
Yes.
Leftist and socialist politics. I know since the ANC Youth League times, you've always been on that part of the political sphere. You've always called for the nationalization of mines, the nationalizations of the Reserve Bank, whether it was of the Youth League, with the EFF, even within the MK party. In this current political climax, given the rise of capitalism, the way capitalism has centered itself within South Africa, do you still feel there's a place for it within this country at this very moment?
So, a very good and sober understanding of politics is that you must understand politics within a global context all the time.
Sure.
You can always isolate countries and want to assess them. Let me give you some factual and logical basic information about what has happened in the world now. So of the 1 billion people who were taken out of absolute poverty in the world over the past 20, 25 years, 30 years, more than 800 million of those were taken out of poverty in the People's Republic of China, which is run by a Communist Party of China, and repeatedly and correctly says that its driving ideology is Marxism, Leninism, which works. Actually, in the recent past conference of the Communist Party of China, General Secretary Xi Jinping says that we got to take more than 800 million people out of absolute poverty because of proper application of Marxism, Leninism. The other country, by the way, that got to realize fastest levels of economic growth, development, and common prosperity is Vietnam. And it's led by the Vietnamese Communist Party. It applies socialist politics and politics in terms of what happens. There is not a single country in the African continent that has ever practiced socialism. All of them were driven by capitalist philosophy and ideology, and all of them were dismal failure in terms of what happens. The manner in which you position the politics must take into consideration what have been the developments all over the world and what are the comparative success stories on how you drive economic growth and how you get to realize the development of the productive forces as led by the state and what then becomes the role of the private sector in terms of that regard. The Federal Republic of Ethiopia is the most successful economy in the African continent in the past 15 years with average growth of 10%. There is a visible and meaningful strategic state participation in the economy. There is meaningful and clearly defined relationship between the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the People's Republic of China, which has led to common prosperity in terms of what happens. And all other countries that fell into the trap of neoliberal capitalism, which is a system that says that you must not protect your infant industries, you must allow the other countries like from Europe, from the Northern America, from all over to come and dump finished goods and products into your economy. That has led to the underdevelopment and the perennial unresolved underdevelopment of almost all African countries. And that is the crisis that we're still dealing with. And we are, of course, going to listen to the people of South Africa as to what is the best economic model that we should pursue to lead to collective economic prosperity for all the people of South Africa. If our people say that we should pursue a mixed economic system, we should listen to that. But we will be able to illustrate through evidence-based information and knowledge that actually the countries that got to defeat poverty over the last 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years are the countries that have done the following things. Shouldn't we consider this as part of the options as to how we handle economic development moving forward? It's an issue which, of course, will be subjected to thorough scrutiny and scientific discussions and delimitation so that no one feels like there is an imposition of some narrow ideological position which is not based on scientific assessment on whether the outcome is guaranteed or not on how we move forward. So basically, we open to listen to everyone else, but whoever comes with an input must illustrate to us how continuation with neoliberal capitalism is going to uplift the lives of our people. Someone must illustrate to us how not changing the property relations where white minority owns 80% of the land is going to reduce poverty and inequality in South Africa. Someone must illustrate to us how the total ownership of all the strategic mineral resources is preserved for multinational greedy corporations is going to uplift the lives of our people. So we need to discuss that openly. So if a person believes that let's leave Lone Mean and Anglo-American and BHP Billiton, Exaro and all of those to continue to super exploit our natural and mineral resources, if they say believe that that is what is going to take us of poverty, they must illustrate how it's going to deal with poverty. We will listen to everything else, but we've got views, we've got information, we've got knowledge as to what has not worked here in South Africa and what has not worked in any part of the world. And we've got some degree of knowledge as to what works elsewhere in terms of some of the principles. But we are going to listen to everyone and we will come with a solution once we have consolidated the perspectives of everyone else in South Africa.
I'm going to pay you a compliment here, Mr. Shivambu. It's not going to be the last compliment I pay you. I listened to your lectures during lockdown when you were still the EFF deputy leader when it came to economics. And I was captured by when you spoke about, obviously, how South Africa had its first sort of quote-unquote state capture had occurred when Cecil John Rhodes had come and, of course, had started taking the mines over. And many black Africans lived entire straits during that time. And it's, of course, something that continued. The EFF was based on what had happened at Marikana. The reason why I wanted to bring this discussion up is that the ANC was built on leftist and socialist politics. And, of course, came into power. It supposedly, from what I can look, and this was the discussions I had with a lot of people, lost touch with the economic aspect of the people of South Africa. And you, of course, have mentioned that also, that a lot of individuals, especially white South Africans, still have a lot of control in the economic aspects of it. The current president of South Africa, and many ANC members would deny this, is a capitalist by nature, given who he is, what he owned back then. Of course, he said he has declared it, that he is no more involved in it. But when you look at that from an ANC perspective, when you look at the way the economy now is being run, close to 40% of unemployment, is there still an end of the light, that light at the end of the tunnel, Mr. Shivambu, where the economy can be held by the majority of the people, which are the black South Africans?
No, for us, the issue is that you spoke for a very long time now, but you made a lot of highly objectionable statements. You said that the ANC is guided by left and socialist policies.
No, I'm saying leading up to obviously when democracy has come.
The ANC has always been a highly contested liberation movement in terms of its ideological orientation and character and content. But the dominant faction and politics of the ANC have been neoliberal even before freedom, or so-called freedom, was attained in 1994. And the driving ideology of the African National Congress in government, institutionally and formally from 1996, has been neoliberal capitalism. South Africa has got possibly the most open borders in terms of global trade, as opposed to the most advanced capitalist nations in the world, due to the ANC policy. So in terms of neoliberal policies and approach, the African National Congress deserves the status of a pope of neoliberalism in the whole world. So to want to confuse socialist policies or left politics with the ANC, it's a conceptual mistake which must never be repeated and said anywhere, because it will then get to delegitimize otherwise proper left interventions that have to be made in an economy that will lead to proper collective development. I gave an example of what Vietnam has got to do, what the People's Republic of China has got to do, what Ethiopia is doing, the Federal Republic of Ethiopia is doing now to shape its economic direction and content. So those are the things that we have to pay attention theoretically, clearly to, so that there is no confusion as to what happens. And the central emphasis, again, I emphasize, is that let's go to listen to the people, and when we listen, we will be able to share some of the experiences and observations that we have made about the global economy, about the economies of different countries. We will be able to also give a systemic analysis as to where did we go wrong as South Africa. How did we get to have more than 12 million people who are looking for jobs but cannot find them? And you can't separate that from neoliberal capitalism, because if you open up your industries, you can't outcompete the People's Republic of China in the production of textiles and shoes and basic electronics. And if you're going to bring those as finished goods and products, it means the person who was going to manufacture them here in South Africa in the Free State as a job will lose that job. If you're going to bring cement from other parts of the world, those who are going to dig cement here in South Africa are going to lose their job. If you're going to bring food items from Europe and you allow the Americans to come and dump the chicken products in the South African market, you're going to lose the job which was going to be created by a poultry farmer and poultry transporter and whoever was going to package that food here in South Africa. And that is the direct relationship between neoliberal capitalism and perennial crisis of unemployment and poverty in South Africa. And the ANC has been presiding over that system. And that is what we will talk about openly when we engage our society, that this is the facts and what do we do differently within different considerations of what is practical. But genuinely, we are willing to listen to the people of South Africa as to what is to be done, and we will do, as loyal servants of the people, what the people say we should do.
After the break, I wrap up my conversation with Floyd Shivambu. Do stay tuned to Talking Point. Welcome back to Talking Point. We're in the final segment of this conversation with Floyd Shivambu, the national convener of the Mayibuye Consultation Process. Mr. Shivambu, before we touch on, the future plans for this consultation process, I want to speak on Palestine. You've always been an advocate for the liberation of Palestine, from the ANC Youth League to the EFF. I know questions haven't been asked to you while you have been obviously a member of the MK party, but you see now what's happening. People are getting killed while getting aid. The Israelis are clear that there's certain parts of the Israeli government that does not want a ceasefire. They want to have this ethnic cleansing happening in Gaza at the moment. I just wanted to get your take on the current happenings in Palestine and your solidarity that you've had with the people of Palestine for quite some time.
No, look, you're correct that for the entirety of our political lives, we have always identified with the struggles of the people of Palestine, and have always been against the Zionism, the narrow Zionism of apartheid Israel. And that has never changed. It has never changed anywhere. But something which must bring to your attention, though, because this channel, Hilaal, speaks to the Muslim community. There's an organization called the Muslim Judicial Council. I think they're in Cape Town. They went to meet President Zuma and said that because I attended a church in Malawi.
Oh, yes, Shepherd Bushiri.
Where there is possibly more than 80, if not 100 flags there. And then there's a flag of Israel there. And then they said, I support Israel because I attended a church where there's a flag of Israel amongst thousands of many flag expressions, or hundreds of those that were there. And then those people of the Muslim Judicial Council went to say that I must be removed as a Secretary General of Bukonto Isizu because of that, because in their narrow mind, they are saying that I support Israel, which is absolute rubbish. And we just thought we must deal with that there is opportunism.
Well, I never know that up until you brought it now. Right.
There is opportunism amongst some of the constituencies in the Muslim community and in those who are pro-Palestine that is utilized for narrow politics, which we have to call out in a much more decisive way, because these people, they know that in Parliament, in terms of even visible solidarity with Palestine, we have always expressed the view. They don't come to speak to us about whether they were still on course and everything as they enter into narrow factional politics, which have got nothing to do with them for opportunistic purposes. And that must be called out much more decisively, that if you are genuine about a cause, you must be able to engage all sectors of society and persuade them. And if you suspect that they might be drifting away from the main cause, you must have political and ideological persuasion with them to say that, hey, it looks like we're no longer seeing this thing together. Can we please just reaffirm that we're seeing this perspective together?
Did they reach out to you?
No, they never reached out to me. They just went to take an opportunistic element in terms of how they got to handle that. But we don't associate none whatsoever with apartheid Israel. We'll never associate with
because
that.
I've known you for the longest of time.
So
Mr. Shivambu, you've always called out Israel. You've called out saying that even when you were with the EFF, I think it was Julius Malema at the time saying, well, we'll come out and even arm Hamas to fight? Because Hamas is
So
to fight the occupying power in the United Nations. They are allowed to
so
do so. Yes.
I formed part of. I led a caucus in Parliament that tabled a motion to remove the Israeli embassy here in South Africa.
I do remember. Yeah.
But it's one of those issues, you know, in the process of struggle, you will find opportunistic elements like the Muslim Judicial Council, which degenerated into the gallery to play dirty politics. But it perhaps was a blessing in disguise because it has given us an opportunity to speak to the people of South Africa without constraint of the MK as to what is to be done moving forward. And we will, of course, consolidate that the anti-imperialist character and the anti-colonial character that define our politics will never be shed off. Doesn't matter what happens. There is no amount of money, no amount of influence that will change us from associating with the oppressed and discriminated people of the world. That is our politics, and that will never change. It doesn't matter who says what. So those will always be our politics. That those who are oppressed and those who are not being treated properly will always be our friends.
Mr. Shivambu, before we touch on future on Mayibuye Consultation Process, I just want to, there was a report, and if you could shed light to it on, within the MK party, a lot of members are upset at Colleen Makubeli, who's the current chief whip of the MK party, who has a sort of stance for Israel. Do you have any comment on that at this moment?
I don't know anything about that, and I've not. So during my tenure as Secretary General and National Organizer, there was no such an issue that was brought to my attention. And now I've been very busy focusing on my Mayibuye process. I don't know what is happening in the day-to-day politics of Mkhonto Sizwe. We were focusing on the Mayibuye process, and that is what we're concentrating on. I don't know what is the issue about Colleen and all of those things.
All right. Mr. Shivambu, the future of this process, it's discussions. How are these discussions going to take place? Which communities are you going to go to? And what is the target that you're setting to say, we've listened to the people of South Africa, let's act to make sure that the listening becomes action?
So the manner in which we're going to shape our engagements is that we're going to engage with all the religious institutions and mega churches like the Zion Christian churches, in both its manifestations, the Nazareth Baptist Church of Obuhleni, Pakameni, and all the other components, the IPHC and the TACC, which is the 12th Apostle Church in Christ, the TACT, which is the 12th Apostle Church in Trinity, different religious streams, like people who represent the Muslim community in a genuine
even the MJC
form.
Like, they come?
We will deploy people to go and speak to them as
no
well to hear what their views are. We will listen to everyone else that has got something to say. The Jewish community in South Africa, if they want to contribute, they will contribute. We'll also get a time to appraise the different foreign missions and embassies that are here in South Africa so that they do not mischaracterize the process that we are engaged in. And then we will then listen to different constituencies. And after having gone through that, we will then consolidate a report. We will, in the intervening period, have constant reports to a structure which we said is going to be established of the Council of Elders. And then we'll process a report. And if the report says we must form a political party, we will then announce the details of that political party, of where it's found, and how do people participate, and what are its principles, what are its values, and what is the program towards the 2026 local government elections. And if we contest the 2026 local government elections with the manner and the process that we're engaging in, it will be meaningful and impactful contestation which will result in the victory of the Mayibuye process.
Okay. Well, if you do become a political party, we hope to have you back on here again to discuss from taking it forward from a political.
We'll appreciate. We'll come to interact with
much more
with Hilaal, and then we'll interact with people who would support the movement.
No problem.
And we really appreciate.
Mr. Shivambu, absolute pleasure having you, and thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much for having us, and we here will always engage whenever the
No problem.
time permits to
No
do
problem. Definitely. Well, that's Floyd Shivambu, the National Convenor of the Mayibuye Consultation Process. So, well, that's all we have for you here on a talking point from myself, Fahraaz Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.